we have Amy coming back.
I
So
didn't leave. I'm still here.
Amy is going to now talk to one of the leaders in life sciences when it comes to regulatory affairs and digital external engagements, Teginder Singh. Handing it back over to Amy.
Thanks again. And obviously, always enjoying doing these chat moderations. And I'm so happy to now be talking with Teginder Singh, who, as Stan mentioned, is the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs and Digital External Engagement at Kenvue, which is an American consumer health company. So welcome, Teginder. And before I jump into our conversation about some of the regulatory considerations in the healthcare space, I'd like you to just share a little bit of background on yourself, a little more detail, and then talk a little bit about Kenvue.
Sure. Thank you, Amy. I have about 25 years in life sciences industry. By training, a pharmacist, but always had an interest in how can we use emerging technologies and digital technologies to make it better for our patients, consumers, and even to run company operations. So my career has been a trajectory across multiple functions doing digital. I've previously worked at P&G Healthcare in Europe, then in the US global headquarters, then joined Johnson & Johnson about 7 years back. And now Kenvue is a Johnson & Johnson consumer healthcare spin-off. So I can lead regulatory affairs and digital external engagement at Kenvue. So thank you for this opportunity to be here.
Yeah, great. And it's a great evolution to your career path too. Really interesting. So as we think about this ever-changing and dynamic health sector that we're all sort of playing in at this point, and we think about innovation that's happening in this space, which is rapidly changing and accelerating all the time. From a regulatory perspective, how do you stay informed about the innovations and the regulatory developments in the healthcare space? And how does this knowledge impact your role at Kenvue?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, right? There's so much going on. And especially when a company like previously J&J, I had a similar role at J&J, now at Kenvue. We are about in 140 plus markets, right? So I think the first thing in such a large operation we have to do is actually prioritize where we want to really focus on. So I think we kind of focus on what are our lead markets. And even in those lead markets, there's a lot of innovation going on. And I kind of divide it into staying up to speed on what's going on in innovation and then staying up to speed on how the regulations are progressing. So I'll first talk about how we stay up to speed on innovation. So the innovation, staying up to speed on innovation happens in three ways. It happens online, it happens through formal channels, and then it also happens through in-person networking. Places like HITLAB, right? This is a great place to kind of come together and kind of exchange ideas. I think the other major resource I personally use and depend on is actually LinkedIn. Being connected with similar-minded individuals, looking for topics. There are a couple of digital health newsletters one could subscribe to. So I think that's the incoming funnel of staying up to speed on innovation. Now, if we shift to the regulatory side is happens through more formal interactions with the regulators as the regulators are actually publishing information. We have actually mechanisms that whenever updates are happening on healthcare agency websites, we can bring that information in. And then we have filtering criteria put on it that whenever a regulation is published, we actually use artificial intelligence to kind of bring that in, create a summary of that, and see whether it is worthwhile exploring what is really happening in this regulation. Sometimes it does have an impact on our business, and then we actually start doing action planning around it. Other times it just gets put on the watch list. This is some area to watch for. I think the regulatory websites are the major resource of information there for mature markets. For other places, we also depend on our trade organizations, right? Professional organizations, industry organizations, and then finally conferences. So both for innovation and staying up to speed on regulations, I think all three are important. Doing it online, using tech, websites, formal channels through associations and meetings with regulators. And third, I think in-person places like HITLAB.
Well, that's great advice and some good best practices, I think, for the audience here as well, because, you know, in Bill Toronto, when he was speaking during his chat, he highlighted the fact that really understanding the regulatory environment, the regulatory pathways
Yep.
are critically important if you know, if you're in the startup space. So I think what you just shared is good direction for others that are looking to gain better understanding of the regulatory environment. So thanks for that. And when we think about consumer health, it's obviously a huge area of opportunity for innovation. And there are many different entities entering this space, from large organizations to small and startups. What are the biggest regulatory challenges that you foresee for consumer health startups in the near future? And how can they be addressed?
I think one of the biggest consumer health challenges, what I foresee is in terms of data. I think being able to collect good quality data and also stay compliant, right? There's so much regulation coming in terms of where data can be stored, where the servers need to be located, can it cross borders, can it not cross borders? To me, I think that is the biggest challenge. And some of the strategies to apply there are going to be, if data is not going to cross, say, from Europe to US or vice versa, or from some other geography that there are restrictions, structure the setup such that the data doesn't have to kind of cross the boundaries. Because I think when we start looking reactively to it, oh, we now need to be compliant with this, I think that's where it actually really becomes messy. And the other advice I would have for startups is focus on one market at a time, right? Rather than actually try and focus multiple geographies. Because when we actually go multiple geographies, it is going to bring more and more requirements. I think clearly knowing where there is a big market and then really getting focused on that actually simplifies the regulatory setup, because then you're just kind of looking at the regulations for a given market.
Yeah, I think that's great advice too, because you know, you got to start and sort of get competency in one area before you can kind of go. You don't want to boil the ocean, so to speak. But yeah, that's great advisement there too. So in your role in navigating the complex regulatory landscape, obviously healthcare is so complex, especially in the US in particular. How do you support innovation and collaboration with startups coming from the Kenvue perspective?
I think that, again, two ways, formal and informal. I think informal is participating on networks like this, talking to startups, always open. Any invite I get through LinkedIn, I never say no. I always connect with anybody because every idea is a good idea. And then if there is interest in actually, hey, look, this is something which is in tune with our mission of what we are doing and it matches up with our brands, then we have a formal channel that we have the business development team and a funnel where we actually bring in ideas and then formalize the conversation.
Well, you're going to get hit up on LinkedIn with that invitation, which is really kind and generous. And I would encourage everybody to do that reach out, because as Bill Toronto had said in his chat, the regulatory understanding, the pathways are critically important as you progress with the work that you're doing as a startup. And to tap into expertise like we're talking about here is invaluable. And Teginder, thank you so much for your generous time here, as well as coming out of this, because again, you're going to get a lot of invitations via LinkedIn. But it was a pleasure talking with you, and wish you all the best in your continued success.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, and happy to help anybody who needs help.